Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we're going to talk about emergency preparedness again with your questions. These are questions from people on Twitter, and we're just going to go through them one at a time, kind of work our way through, and it provides a wide frame of reference. So, okay, what's the one thing that people forget in an emergency? I mean, the best answer to this is they're cool. But if you're talking about an item, every time I have done relief after a hurricane, papers. They're papers. Okay, birth certificates, homeowners insurance, life insurance, social security cards. They're paperwork, the stuff that they have to have to continue their life. People tend to forget that in an emergency. My advice when it comes to something like this, take that stuff, put it on a thumb drive. At least you'll have a digital reference for it. How do you prepare yourself for the adrenaline and trauma? You can't. I know that's not the answer people want to hear, but the reality is you can't. You cannot prepare yourself for it. When you think about jobs that are high stress, jobs where you see things that are less than pleasant to see, how do they train? They do the same thing over and over and over again. So it becomes second nature. That's how you deal with it. All of the mental toughness exercises and stuff like that, I mean, you can try it. It can't hurt. But in my experience, that's not what will get you through. What will get you through is being very comfortable with the tasks that you're going to have to complete. And if you know how to do them, you can ignore the other stuff and, collapse later. People like to imagine how they would handle those situations. I have seen people who were certain that they would just be totally calm and be able to handle anything, completely lose it. And I have seen people who were terrified on the ride there be just completely mellow. So I don't think that there is. I don't think there's a mental exercise that you can do. I mean, sure, reading the resistance stuff in the SEER manual, that might help. But I think the most important thing you can do is be very familiar with the task that you're going to have to complete, so you aren't overwhelmed by the stuff that's happening around you while trying to do something. I think that's what will get you through the best. What do you need in an EDC? For those that don't know, EDC is everyday carry. This is the stuff that you're supposed to have with you all the time. What do you need in a survival kit? Food, water, fire, shelter, first aid kit, and a knife. That's what you need in your EDC too. The goal of the EDC is to get you to wherever your stuff is. So you need these same things in smaller quantities, maybe less flexibility, and it needs to be compact. This should fit in your pocket. Let's see. What are some useless or scam items for emergencies? Yeah, there's probably not any videos on that. And that's because people who would review emergency or survival items are people who are survival minded. And what is far more important than any purchased product is the mindset of everything's useful, you just have to find out why. So generally speaking, people who are into that world, that they'll find a use for it. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that is just absolute garbage, but at the same time, I'm one of those people who focuses more on knowing how to do stuff with less than I am on gadgets. I mean, as we talked about in the other video on this channel about survival, knowledge weighs nothing. Everything else you have to carry, and it gets heavy after a while. Refrigerated meds. This is a question that comes up often because there's no good answer. If you're going to be in a situation without power for an extended period, and you are somebody who needs medications that are refrigerated, yeah, you've got to work that out. None of your options are good. You have the cooler option, but that's only going to last as long as the ice does. And how you're actually going to regulate the temperature to keep it in the range you need it to be in, that's anyone's guess. You can get a generator. However, some people can't afford them. And then you also run into the issue of them running out of fuel. One that I've seen that I thought was unique was somebody getting one of the little refrigerators that you plug into a car, because then it was mobile. And I thought it was a unique answer, but still, eventually you'd run out of gas. There is no good answer to this. And as a demonstration of how much of a problem it is, if you're an insulin-dependent diabetic, you can't deploy. You can't join the military because it's too hard to maintain the refrigeration. It's a limiting factor that even with the logistical capability of the United States military, they still haven't found a way around it. Not a reliable one. What are the essential classes? I am a huge advocate for the woofer, the wilderness first responder, because again, it's teaching you to do more with less, right? At the same time, that course is expensive. I think the cheapest one I've ever seen was $500. And it's also pretty intensive as well. There are a bunch of courses out there for first aid, right? Any of those. Make sure you have good first aid training. You know how to stop a bleed. You know how to apply a tourniquet, the basic stuff. And then I would go to archive.org, type in field manual, and look through the topics. That website has just this massive collection of military field manuals. When people think of military field manuals, you think of soldier stuff, right? The thing is, there are manuals on basic carpentry, on how to generate electricity. All of this stuff, it's there. And if you read these and just kind of read through them once or twice, you're going to remember them. They're written in a way so everybody can understand it. They have lots of diagrams, lots of pictures, lots of breaking it down into plain English, you know. So I would definitely recommend that. How do you get your friends ready as well? That's a tough one, and the answer is zombies. The thing I've seen have the best results is to not try to talk about hurricanes or floods or wildfires or whatever it is that's in your area. Talk about zombies. And if you do that, and what would you do in a zombie apocalypse type thing, people actually start thinking about it and they put more thought into it than they would if you asked them to talk about something that could actually happen, you know? And then once they're done describing, hey, you know, that's the same thing that you would need to do for this natural disaster. It's a really good metaphor. So I would go that route because inevitably when they're describing what they're going to do in their zombie apocalypse plan, it's going to include teaming up with their friends. So I would go through that and then try to work that into, world subjects. Okay. there's heavy flooding in my area. What's an additional thing that I would need? A boat, obviously. And that sounds like a joke. I'm not joking. There's a company called Intex, and they make very inexpensive little rafts. They range from $20 to maybe $200, but that one seats like 10 people. Get one of those. I mean, if you're looking for extra stuff and your concern is flooding, yeah, get a raft. How much is too much? Are we looking for a week or a year? Minimum 2 weeks. You want to have 2 weeks of supplies because you could end up in a situation like Katrina, where it just takes forever for the help to get there. When you get beyond that, when does it become too much? When it's no longer about being prepared and it becomes a habit unto itself. It becomes something that isn't about planning for a specific event. It becomes a lifestyle. That's when I think it's too much. If you can spend, one day every 3 months or whatever, and you're prepared for 10 years, I mean, that's fine. It doesn't consume your life, Let's see. Comfort items to keep your mind busy. Playing cards, travel board games, coloring books, stuff like that. Let's see. Does emergency prep look different for targeted minorities? Yeah, everything looks different for them. Yes. If it was me, I would focus on being even more self-reliant. Because when you look at news coverage about hurricanes, when that helicopter is flying over and they see a bunch of white people coming out of a supermarket, white people find supplies. Well, they don't say white people, but they say people find supplies. That's what's in the headline down below. That's what's on the ticker. And when they're black, looting after storm. Law enforcement will probably view it the same way. I would try to be even more self-reliant because they're probably not going to be much help. MREs or canned goods. Well, you have a number of things to consider here. One is price. Canned goods are way cheaper, way cheaper. Then you have the length of time you're planning on storing them. MREs, they last a little bit longer. I don't know that it warrants the price, but they do last a little longer. And then you have to look at how many people you're talking about. If you have a giant family, you probably want to go with canned goods. If it's just you, yeah, you can probably do, a couple cases of MREs. But canned goods for most people is probably going to be the answer because you can rotate them, put the new stuff in the back, the stuff that was in there moves to the front, and you can keep a base built, and it's inexpensive to build it up because canned goods are cheap. So canned goods are going to be the answer for most people. When does being prepared become being over-prepared? When that's what you're focused on. Emergency preparedness is supposed to be something that is freeing. You don't have to worry as much because you already have it taken care of. It's not supposed to become a lifestyle. It's not supposed to become something that's totally consuming. It's supposed to be there when you need it and to alleviate concern. You don't have to worry about this because you have that handled, And then there's a suggestion to ask, what are you preparing for? And that's a really good question. Not just what type of event, but are you talking about short term, medium term, long term? How long are you talking about? Most people just need short term, few weeks. When you start looking into longer than that, you're talking about major issues where you could be isolated or stranded, or you're talking about, when you get to the long-term stuff, you're talking about the breakdown of civilization. That's an entirely different type of preparedness. That requires a whole lot of different thought processes. And that's not, that I don't want to say that that's not something you should do, because, climate change is real. But I would plan more for resiliency than, just the breakdown of civilization. But I'm an optimist. What about people with disabilities or people with mobility issues? This is another question that people tend to dodge because there's no good answer. If you live somewhere that is that's secure, your best bet is probably not to bug out. It's to shelter in place and stay where you're at. And you work on making that place, that location, more resilient. If that isn't an option, the next thing is just kind of realizing that your solution to emergency preparedness is more about being aware. Knowing when the storms are coming, knowing when fires are getting close, that type of stuff. So you can get out ahead of time with time to spare and you can evacuate. Because again, mobility, that is one of those things that it's limiting to the degree that the military itself hasn't really found the logistics to deal with it. And you're looking at setting up that same type of logistic network by yourself. It's hard. The answer there is you secure that location and you get it prepared. And for people who are in that situation, I would go well beyond 2 weeks. Because 2 weeks is what it takes for them, in some cases, to set up distribution points. For them to get to the point where people will bring stuff to you, it might be another 2 weeks. So I would go a little bit beyond on that one. That, or if you have the ability, be prepared, be alert, and remove yourself from the situation beforehand. Those are your best answers. Okay. Water filtration. And this question also had some stuff like asking about different equipment and how to use it. The first video, I think it's actually called The Roads to Basic Survival or something like that. We go through how to use several different types of filter and demonstrate how to use them, sucking water out of a less than clear pond. Now soon we will have a video here that shows how to build a solar still as well. And then how do you get power from a car battery? Keith, the guy in that video, gave me this. I don't know if he made it himself or he bought it, but I'm sure they can be bought. This end, jumper cables. The other end, a lighter. So you can drop a USB connection in here, the type you plug into the lighter in your car, or you can get a power inverter that uses a lighter adapter in a car. And then you have it. You can use car batteries to power the power adapter or the power inverter. And those things, power inverters, run like, I don't know, $20 at Walmart, maybe $40 at AutoZone, something like that. And those give you outlets like you have in a wall. And then the last one, how can you help in a disaster without getting in the way? Stay off the line. That's it. Stay off of the immediate front line. Everywhere else, believe me, having done a lot of relief work, they'll find a spot for you. There's always something that can be done. And if you show up and you say, I'm here to help, believe me, they will put you to work. The key thing is stay out of the immediate impact area, like where people are being cut out of houses, or if there's a fire, obviously you don't want to be near that. Stay away from that front line until you're really ready to do that. And that's a different world. When you start doing that stuff, you're accepting a whole lot of risk and liability. So you can show up at the relief centers and just say you want to help. They will find a spot for you that isn't in the way. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.